There are managers making 1, 2, if not 3 transfers this week, and I have considered rolling. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. This is Bazball FPL. Thank you again to everyone for your support over the last sort of month as this channel started its inception. Would love for anyone to leave a like or subscribe to the channel, but we will crack on. My team has issues, especially with heavy Chelsea, Arsenal and City heading into the blank game week in 31. But however, the glaringly obvious ones at the moment are Timber, Chalobah, Enzo and Rice long term. But this week, I actually line up pretty well, which we'll go and touch on in a second. But the real risk for me isn't doing nothing at the moment, although many managers are making moves. For me, it's the unknown around the flexibility that you'll need beyond 31. The plan still is to wildcard in 32, bench boost in 33, and free hit in 34, with hoping to then build some transfers in and around outside that, because you never know towards the end of the season what you might need. But look, the current context, if you have a look at it, 55 points, really have steadied my rank over the last couple of weeks. As I said in one of my previous videos, after that first game night, I think on the Tuesday in the midweek game week, I was down to 27,000, and then after the Virgil 17 pointer, that essentially saved me and what looks like the season. So I'm back up to 7,190, which is great. Virgil van Dijk, I love him now. I always did, but such a frustrating asset. But coming off a 17-pointer and 11-pointer, and Liverpool's defense, look, the data showed, and then I guess we were still leaking goals, but you know, not only is the data there at the moment, but the clean sheets are there with it. And I'll touch on sort of what I'm potentially thinking around the Liverpool defense later on as well. Wilson arguably being the asset of the season for me, and I would argue Chalobah has probably been the most disappointing. Out of that fixture run that they had, which was absolutely ridiculous in regards to Leeds, Burnley, Wolves, and might have even been Palace or whoever it was, no clean sheets. Yes, he got some def coin in and around that, but for how expensive he was as a defender, I would put him in top 3 worst assets I've owned this season. Look, Timber's been disappointing since returning to my side, and is definitely a consideration of starting to leave my side as well. And look, Rice also looks pretty likely for an exit soon as well. But having looked at the fixtures, Enzo is probably going to be the main priority. Look, although you can see glaring transfers that need to be made in the fact of Chalobah, Timber, Enzo, Rice, etc., although it looks like they need to be transferred out, if you actually have a look at my team, and we'll have a look at it in a sec, and how it lines up, it's not essential that it happens this week. So, look, as I've sort of mentioned, with blank in 31, wildcard 32, benched boost in 33, and free hit in 34, if that's other people's strategy, I don't know if many people or many managers have thought about the fact that there'll be no transfer that you receive for the wild card in 32 and no transfer that you receive for the wild card in 34. Therefore, only getting one transfer in that bench boost week across 3 game weeks. So that doesn't leave a lot of flexibility for the rest of the season if you haven't sort of accounted for that, and that's the strategy in which you're wanting to play. So what my team actually looks like this week is, and as I said, I think it lines up pretty well. So Verbruggen, was great to see him return for me. It's been a tough ride with the Verbruggen and Dubravka alternation, but for people that have stuck with it, and again, we spoke about in the last video about not many people do goalkeeper transfers, and I'm so glad that I didn't do Verbruggen to Kelleher, because they end up actually leaking 2, and I think Kelleher ended up on a 1 point, and with Verbruggen getting the clean sheet and the bonus point for a 7-pointer. So I've learnt my lesson there, I think. Don't really touch goalkeepers at all costs unless you absolutely have to. But look, I really like the way in which my team lines up this week. We've got Gabriel against Chelsea, best defender asset in the game. Guehi against Leeds away, clean sheet opportunity there, and Virgil at home to West Ham, another clean sheet opportunity. Yes, we have Wirtz that is yellow flagged at the moment, but again, if he starts, then a great fixture. But Bruno Fernandes, Crystal Palace at home, another great fixture. The glaringly obvious one is obviously Enzo away at Arsenal. I'm happy to play Rice at home to Chelsea, and also happy to play Harry Wilson at home to Tottenham, who are in absolute shambles. Then that forward line can't really get much better with Haaland away to Leeds and Thiago away to Burnley. So, as I said, the team looks pretty good, although I'm probably going to get rid of Enzo in the space, and I'll speak about what that looks like. There's a possibility that I keep Timber and Chalobah on the bench for this week, because then it gives me another week to see if there's any injuries, see if there's anything else that sort of happens, or I know anything that managers aren't currently seeing where I might be able to get an edge over people that really go strong in their transfers this week. So look, the glaring move at the moment that I'm looking at, and I will go into transfers, and this has been 1 week where I've really ummed and ahed. So if we take Enzo out, and I think the obvious one at the moment not the obvious one, but the one that I'm sort of looking at is Schärder. Big differential. Everyone's saying that there's not much difference between Schärder at 6.9 million and Dango for a whole million cheaper at 5.9 million, but money isn't really something that I need at the moment or are prioritizing. So if I can go Schärder, who's a little bit of a differential, who I think potentially is a tiny little bit better of an asset, then I think the upside is there to potentially go on Schärder. Mbeumo is another interesting one, although I can't afford him at the moment. He's been the bane of my existence over the last couple of weeks. He just keeps coming away with sort of those niggly assist returns, and scored a goal a couple of weeks ago as well. But in order to get to Mbeumo, I would have to probably release either Timber or Chalobah, and given price changes, Timber would probably be the one that exits my side. And then again, the options that I would be looking at with him would be Hill of Bournemouth, but again, he potentially wouldn't fit in my side this week, and that's one of his good fixtures at home to Sunderland, versus Anderson, who's got more of a long-term fixture run headed into 31, especially eyeing off that Burnley fixture in the blank in 31. Then something that's been sort of highlighted to me, and why I'm so keen on Brentford assets as well and for people who aren't wildcarding in 32, is Brentford have some incredible fixtures really for the next sort of 6 to 8 game weeks. So it's definitely something for those who have already wildcarded to have a look into Brentford assets. So option A is potentially to use 2 or 3 transfers and get really aggressive, fix Enzo, fix Timber, chase the fixtures, which will then mean that I lose flexibility beyond 31, I feel. Or option B is to stay controlled, which I'm sort of leaning on the side of, where I'll possibly only make 1 transfer. I don't think I'll roll, just because I think it would be silly to. Or again, there is a possibility that I could roll, because I could change Enzo out, which we could see here. I could change Enzo and line up in a 4-4-2. Like there's nothing wrong with that side either. But again, I'm going to wait until tomorrow and see what the team news is around Wirtz. That could also be just a massive contributing factor as to which way I lean. But again, Enzo probably exits first. Timber, disappointing but playable. Chalobah likely gone soon as well. Rice, I actually don't see as urgent, although the midfielder stocks are looking very juicy for players who have massive upside and great fixtures. And then at the moment, I think Haaland has the captaincy armband for me. Bruno, routes to bonus have sort of reduced, along with sort of the reliant DEFCON now that he's playing higher. But again, he's that type of player that sort of is the heartbeat of United. So I'm sure it is just a blip in the road, and he's always been quite a great FPL asset. Just because I have 3 transfers, and I guess if you have 3 transfers, doesn't mean that you should use them. Think about the way in which you want to play the rest of the season. For this, you look at, again, these players where you've got 2 Chelsea, 3 Arsenal, and 2 City, and you're thinking, 3 Chelsea, 3 Arsenal, and 2 City, and you're thinking, wow, I've got to get these players out now. But if you actually have a look at how I line up this week, I'm happy to use potentially 1 transfer and then give myself another week of breathing space to see if anything changes with injuries and other things like that. So again, all I ask is for everyone to leave a comment and just ask any questions that you may have, whether it's your team or what I'm going to be doing in regards to strategy over the next couple of weeks. If you could leave a like, that would be much appreciated as well, and to subscribe. No worries, guys. Have a lovely week. Good luck. Speak soon.